We talk a lot about supply chain strategy, and I do particularly talk a lot about supply chain and operations strategy. And I've had some difficulty only in the last few months do people really understand what supply chain is because of the supply chain disruptions we've seen due to a COVID type of area. So when we talk about things like supply chain strategy, that's not something that rolls off the tongue too much of even business students outside of ASU that don't have a supply chain education. They know a Porter 5 Forces model. They have a kind of a strategy documents they've worked for before. So from your perspective now out, and Tristan, I'll go to you on this. What is, in your opinion, and from your experience, when you go to a client and the question comes, what is supply chain strategy? What would be your answer to that?
Yeah, well, when I was a student, if I had gone to a company and I was presented that question, I would have probably touched on just how important supply chain was without actually answering the question. So I knew how important supply chain was to every organization, and I didn't really understand how connected it was to every other business unit within an organization. So, now after throwing ourselves into industry and having conversations with dozens of different companies, everything from consumer products to high tech companies that have there's some server farms, and I mean, after speaking with all these types of companies, I now see how supply chain strategy is a key driver of the strategic, financial, operational initiatives of all these other business units, and then how those business units in turn help drive the supply chain strategy. So it's much more collaborative than I originally thought. So then to answer the question, I would say supply chain strategy revolves around how teams operate, which is essentially, what is the day-to-day, what are their fundamentals, how teams and companies, leverage what they already do really well, what differentiates them. And we can call those catalysts. The company that Anaplan refers to them those as catalysts. And then lastly, how companies identify and address where they need to improve their supply chain processes, which we can call that like insights or something. So supply chain strategy for me now revolves around those fundamentals, insights, catalysts. And I would say that we work not only within the supply chain department, but your finance folks, your HR folks, your sales folks, those business units drive many of the things that are relevant to supply chain in the immediate and the future, whether it's the demand plan, the supply plan. Think about your demand plan that comes from your sales team and your finance team. They're expecting revenue to be XYZ, and you need to build a consensus with them on what the demand will actually be. So there's a lot more collaboration, and I would just say strategy is something that needs to be approached with that mindset.
Good, really good answer. I mean, one of the things that I see in clients all over is that even if you had a specific supply chain strategy, how that's collaborated over the supply chain to partners is one of the biggest challenges, more than the technical challenge of how do you collaborate real time across a supply chain. So any kinds of possible disruption that happens, maybe it's maybe we have a pandemic, or even something less likely like a factory line goes down in China or overseas that is going to affect your supply chain, that affects your demand plan, that affects your customer orders, which affects your revenue. So not
Right.
even about profitability and cost reduction, but it's about that collaboration real time, through the
Yeah,
supply chain.
and think about it. The crunching the numbers isn't that hard. I mean, everyone can learn how to do it. But what are the steps that need to take place to actually get the numbers, to crunch the numbers and say, we have a plant down in China. What is the impact going to be, and what is the best decision right now to move forward? Pulling the different drivers from all the different teams that would be involved in that discussion would take way too much time. So you're dealing with something that's happened in the past and has already changed in the past week, and now your solution is a week old and it's not needed anymore. So that data essentially has become irrelevant. But you need tools and processes in place that enable like truly real-time planning and adapting.
And one thing I would
in effect, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just at Anaplan, we talk about people, plans, and data. And, as Professor would know better than any of us, there's nothing that exists yet that's just going to build your supply chain strategy for you. That'll be some intense, artificial intelligence someday, I'm sure, that someone can plug in and it will tell you exactly how to run your company. But barring that existing, what you have are people. You have smart people, and they make plans and they make decisions every day. And so what Anaplan does is we come in and we build the platform that enables that whole thing. And we can be consultative. We could say, oh, we see the industry best practice here and here. But just getting the platform under their feet between the different groups that Tristan's talking about and the data that they're chasing around, that just leads to magical things when it comes to those plans, those decision making, the collaboration. And then my thing on the supply chain strategy is exactly what you two just said. I mean, it's no longer just, hey, you guys can cut some cost here, you can cut some cost. It's more like you're in the room with the CFO, the CEO, this is part of the corporate strategy, the short term, the long term. This drives, many different things besides for a few different profitability measures. So